What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
What is happening on the market? May and early June on the Russian fuel market have always been a period of peak demand, the vacation season and the sowing campaign. Started during this period, coinciding with a decrease in gasoline production due to scheduled repairs at refineries. As a consequence, there was a noticeable rise in prices. However, this week the price of a ton of gasoline AI-92 at this St. Petersburg International Mercantile Exchange was about 37,000 rubles, and at trading on Wednesday it went below the mark of 36.8 thousand rubles. The situation is similar with other types of motor fuel. Data archive on stock exchange website shows that this is one of the lowest figures in the last 6 years. Since the beginning of the year, the price has fallen by almost 30%, and compared to the last peak in September 2021, the correction is approaching 40%. Why is gasoline getting cheaper on the exchange? The reason for this is, of course, the events in Ukraine. The EU and US sanctions against Russia have led to a sharp reduction in exports, and foreign partners have stopped buying Russian oil and refined products. Oil companies are not too interested in working in the permitted directions of external supplies as the significantly strengthened ruble, which, by the way, has also shown a record of the last few years, reduces the final volume of revenue. Accordingly, there is more fuel on the domestic market than usual. And according to the laws of economics, when there is an excess of supply, prices start to fall. Current stock exchange quotations reflect how much gasoline has accumulated in Russia compared to the usual situation. In the old days, oil companies varied the volume of sales within the country and on export routes. Now the latter are largely blocked for them, and there is no way to influence the price by reducing supply. Reducing production is a radical step, which means direct losses, so it is not being seriously considered yet. Oil companies must maintain a stable level of production and refinery utilization, otherwise they will have to reduce production. A decline in production leads to the loss of wells and a rather costly and sometimes impossible process of quick reconservation. Explains Alexander Razin, Director for Administration and Business Operations of Baikal Service TC. For the same reason of disconnection with external markets, there was a mismatch between world oil prices and domestic Russian prices. For comparison, in the spring of 2020, at the height of the pandemic, a ton of AI-92 cost more than 40,000 rubles at an oil price of less than $25 per barrel and a ruble-dollar exchange rate above 70 rubles. Now these figures are at BR 37, 000, $115 and BR 62 respectively. Why haven't prices at gas stations decreased? According to Petromarket, compared to the end of February, a litre of AI-92 gasoline at gas stations has become more affordable on average by only 0.5%. This clearly does not correspond to the rate of price reduction on the stock exchange. Retail prices are always reduced quite slowly and reluctantly, they always lag behind the rate of reduction of the wholesale price. Such a decline starts later and is less pronounced, explains Valery Polkovsky, senior analyst at Forex Club Group of Companies. The second reason after the temporary lag is that during the recent period of record high wholesale fuel prices, gas stations, especially independent ones not owned by major oil companies, were operating on the edge of profitability, or even in the minus. Now they are enjoying the moment and recouping the losses of previous periods. The consulting company Petromarket estimates the current margin of filling stations at 7.1 rubles from each sold litre of gasoline AI-92 and 8.3 rubles for gasoline AI-95. The average price of these fuels in Russia is 47 and 51 rubles per litre, respectively. Thirdly, starting from 2019, a damping mechanism has been operating in Russia with regard to fuel prices. When prices on foreign markets are high, the government pays oil companies extra to keep them from raising the price domestically. If they are not incentivized in this way, all the fuel will flow to places where they pay more for it. And vice versa, when it is more profitable to sell in Russia, companies pay additional sums to the budget. At present, the situation is quite unusual. Although world oil prices are hitting their highs, oil products are getting cheaper in Russia. At the same time, the state pays damping subsidies to oil companies since the world market prices are much higher than the indicative price in Russia. As a result, retail prices at filling stations do not go down, despite overstocking and lower demand. Finally, the fourth reason is that so far none of the large-scale market players has simply taken a radical step with a noticeable price reduction. If this happens, other gas station chains will take similar measures in the fight for customers. Should we wait for a price reduction? Experts believe that the correction of retail prices will happen, albeit with a delay. Renat Fadikov, vice president of the Russian Fuel Union, estimates a 15 to 20% decrease in demand for gasoline at retail in May compared to the same month last year. This will force networks to attract customers, which is easiest to do by playing with prices. However, not on the same scale as on the stock exchange. The decline in wholesale fuel prices in Russia does not entail similar processes in the retail segment. This is explained by the high level of monopolization of the oil market. Wholesale prices may fall, but retail prices for the end consumer will only fluctuate within 1 or 2%, the press service of the Avtodom group of companies said. Valery Polkovsky agrees with this opinion. Surely prices will fall in the next few weeks, but the decrease will not be very significant. In any case, sellers will try to keep prices as low as possible and do it until the last minute. Will the state not interfere? The policy of the state in general and the anti-monopoly service in particular is to intervene in the process of obvious price increases. It is unlikely that in this situation they will force gas stations to radically rewrite price tags downwards. Moreover, fuel sellers are not violating anything. The law does not stipulate the maximum allowable markup to the wholesale price. Taxes and excise duties, which account for about 70% of the retail cost of fuel, should not be expected to be reduced. Now the budgets of all levels are filled worse than before the end of February for obvious reasons. Therefore, the government will definitely not want to part with a weighty item of revenue. So motorists can only quietly hope that gas stations will be forced to compete for buyers and low exchange prices will be maintained for a more or less long period of time. In conclusion, while wholesale gasoline prices have reached a record low, the disconnect between these prices and what consumers see at the pump can be attributed to several factors, including supply chain dynamics, refining costs, and market strategies. Gas stations often maintain higher prices to protect their margins and account for operational expenses. As a result, it is unlikely that we will see significant reductions in gas prices in the near future. Understanding these complexities can help consumers navigate the current market landscape more effectively. Thank you for watching and stay informed.